Hello, hello, hello! In this lesson, we're going to be learning about how to get Git set up with our project before we really do anything else. The reason we want to do that is because Git is great for version control. You can see who has made changes to what code. If we mess up at some point and we just don't want to spend an hour debugging our code, we can always just roll back and go and find the bug. We can look at the different versions of different files at different points in time. And that's really the power of Git. Now, why is that useful? Well, as an individual developer, it might not be. It's really just a backup plan just in case your computer crashes or something. But as a team, it is absolutely vital because you and other people can work on the same project at the same time and incorporate each other's work together. We're not going to be doing that, and this course is not a Git course, but I want to get you a little bit familiar with Git. Now, if you are familiar with Git, awesome. Just ignore this Git stuff. If you are not familiar with Git, however, this is probably pretty good practice. This is a little introduction into the world of Git. So, without further ado, let's look at our website. We have localhost. That's my website. This is where I'm going to be building the login system. It's on my local machine. And if you've noticed, I'm using Ubuntu. I'm using Linux. You don't have to. You can use Windows. You can use Mac. Localhost all works the same way. You can also use a server up on the cloud. You can use AWS, HostGator, Linode, DigitalOcean, whatever. As long as it's running basically Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. You can use Windows as well instead of Linux to host this environment, but it's just a little more of a pain in the arse. Let's go to GitHub. The first thing we want to do is create a new repository. Well, I mean, if you don't have an account, create an account, then create a new repository. The repository name for this one is just going to be PHP login system, nothing fancy. A sample login system with user registration. Public or private? I'm going to select public because I want you guys to be able to view this code. I also don't want to pay for a private repo. Repo is short for repository, which is basically my code is up on the cloud. Initialize this repository with a README? Yeah, might as well. Create a README for me. If it's a little less work that I have to do, awesome, do it for me. Create repository. Now I've got a repo. If I go to github.com/calebtullian/php login system, I will have my login system. Here's the name, here's the description, nothing fancy. But what we want is this green button here. It says clone or download. Clone with SSH means that GitHub has my SSH keys, which essentially just means that GitHub knows that my computer has been authenticated. I don't have to type in my password or username anymore. It just knows who I am. If you don't have that option, if you don't know what all that is, that's fine. You can use the HTTPS method, and you've noticed that the URL actually changes, goes from git@github.com:calebtullian project name to using HTTPS, which is https://github.com/username/project. So you can just use HTTPS instead, and it's just going to ask you for your GitHub username and your password. And that's totally fine. GitHub is very trustworthy. You can send them that information. But remember, you do need a GitHub account for that to actually work. Now, I'm going to use the SSH one because I don't want to type in my username and my password every single time we do anything with Git. So we're just going to skip that whole stage, and I'm going to copy this URL, go over to my console, and type git clone PHP login system. So all I did was git clone the entire project. I'm using the SSH URL, so Git knows who I am. And this is the directory that I want it to go into. I don't actually want to call it system. Let's call it PHP login course, I guess. Hit enter. Cloning into PHP login course. Everything is good there. I don't see any errors. CD PHP login course. LL or ls-a or ls-la. All these different options show your different folders. Now we've got one folder up. We've got our Git folder, which is where Git stores all its changes and its history and all that. And then we have that README. Now that README is this file. Awesome. That readme.md. Now if I open up Sublime, I have PHP login course, and I've only got the one file. Now my computer has the exact same code that GitHub has. That's pretty cool. Now let's make our first commit. So what we want to do is create a new file. Index.php, if I could spell that right, it'd be great. Now, this is currently what the index page looks like before I create the index.php file. And when I refresh, now that I have an index file, nothing shows up. Awesome. PHP echo hello world. If you're not familiar with very much PHP, that's fine. You don't really need to be. This course isn't super advanced or anything. And we're going to get more advanced as we go along. It's going to be a great learning curve for you. Save, refresh the page, hello world. There we go. We have our first page. But if we go to Git, I just refresh the page and there's no index.php file. I have an index.php file. So why does Git not have that? Well, it's because we didn't tell Git to download the file from us. Or rather, we didn't tell Git to push our code to github.com. So we go back to our terminal, type in git status, and we have untracked files. We only have one untracked file, so git add index.php, git status again. It's now in green instead of red, and it says new file. Awesome. Now, if I go back to GitHub, and I refresh the page, guess what? The code still is not there. Well, why is that? Well, it's because all we did was we staged the code. That means it's getting ready to be pushed up to Git, or to GitHub rather. Now, if we were editing 200, 300 files at a time, if we were using some, I don't know, front-end system, NPM with Grunt or Gulp, maybe a Sass compiler, it could edit a ton of files at the same time, and we might not want to push all those changes. We just want to push the one file. Well, that's all we want to do right now. So now that this is in green, we type git status. Great. So anything that's, there we go. Anything that's in green means it's staged. Git commit m. Let's just call this hello world. So git is the command to run any git commands. Commit is basically the function to run. It takes one parameter, -m, and that's the message that we're going to give it. I hit git lg, which is a custom command. Instead, you could type git log. Basically shows you the same thing, but it's got your email address in there. I just like seeing this one because it shows us where it's at, where we're at. Origin master is where GitHub is. Origin head is where GitHub thinks it is. And our head, not origin/head, just our head, is at a different stage. Now, let's go back to Git, refresh our page. Guess what? The code's still not there. Now, why is that? Well, again, we made the commit, we gave it a message, we said, yeah, this is ready to go to GitHub, but we didn't actually send it to GitHub. So we need one more command. I know this sounds like a lot of commands, but once you get used to this, it's super, super fast. So we type git push origin master. What it did there was counting the number of objects that we have, number of files essentially. It's using delta compression methods basically to compress our files so that they don't have to, Git doesn't have to send 2 gigabytes up to GitHub every single time. It can compress that down into something smaller, so it's a lot faster. Compression objects, 100%, 2 of 2, awesome. Writing objects, it wrote a few objects for us. And where is it going? It's going to where we told it to go to. This is where we cloned our repo. Now, when we go to GitHub, refresh the page, now is when our code will show up. And look at that, we have index.php, and it has our message here. It even has our time. So if we clicked on hello world, we could see what was added, what was not added. If we go back, we can click on index.php, and we can actually see the code. Now that matches with what this is. Now, if I type test in here, which just regular text, right? And we go back here and we refresh, nothing is going to happen. And that's because we didn't tell Git that there are any changes yet. So we would go through that whole process again. We're going to do that a few times throughout this course. It's going to be very familiar for you. Again, this is not a Git-based course, but we just want to get our project set up with Git so that we can have different versions. And you can see, if you wanted to, you could see the history of our files. So that's getting set up with Git. If you wanted to, you could follow this whole procedure with your own account. You don't have to use the exact name PHP login system. You could call whatever you like and just create your first file and basically commit it, put it into your staging area, and then push it up to Git. And once it's on there, you're ready to move on to the next lesson. If you're already familiar with Git and you don't want to do this stuff, totally fine. And we'll see you in the next video.